No Super Bowl fallout when you think about it. If you go back 10 years ago, we spent 5 days talking about Malcolm Butler's interception against Russell Wilson. We talked about that play that was called. The end of that Super Bowl. What was at stake? Russ was going to win another one. Pete Carroll, another Super Bowl. Tom was going to be denied a Super Bowl. We spent 5 days on that. There's no real fallout because there was no real contest. There was nothing really to talk about other than, okay, the Eagles, can they repeat? They're going to lose a couple of defensive players. They lost Kellen Moore. He's now the Saints head coach. With the Chiefs, I guess there's at least discussion points because you're talking about that offensive line again, like we did a couple of years ago against Tampa Bay. And then you have Travis Kelce. Is Kelce going to be back? Will they go out and make a play? Tyreek Hill wants out of Miami or maybe still wants to be in Miami. Do they bring Tyreek Hill back? I don't know. But what's Kansas City do in the offseason? They always seem to do the right thing in the offseason, plug and play. But that's about it when you think about it. The Super Bowl is over. It was over before it was over. It was over at halftime, it felt like. And it just doesn't feel like there's any real discussion points there with them moving forward. Maybe a little bit. Now, I'm going to play executive at ESPN. If I was going into the SportsCenter rundown meeting, and I would say, okay, now, once again, I'm doing this for ESPN and how ESPN does it. Jalen Hurts, elite quarterback. Is he a top 5 quarterback now? That would be a topic that we would have. Should Travis Kelce retire? Where does the Eagles' defense rank among all the great defenses of all time? Once again, I'm trying to get bullet points where if you're flipping through the channels, you'll go, Jalen Hurts, elite quarterback, ? You might stop. Eagles' defense, best Super Bowl defense of all time, ? You'll stop there. Should Travis Kelce retire, ? That's how it works. When you go into the meetings, SportsCenter meetings, or First Take, or any of these other shows, it's like, all right, what is going to be a great bullet point you put on the screen? People might not have the sound up, and they'll be flipping through, and then they'll stop on that. And I get that. I mean, we're trying to come up with topics that are legitimate. And I did hear yesterday that people were talking about Jalen Hurts is the elite quarterback. I don't even know what that means. I think he's a winner. I don't know if he's an elite quarterback because during the regular season, we really don't talk about him. But we have talked about him in both of these Super Bowls and these postseason. And he played great. Absolutely. But I think elite is kind of a tricky word, a designation. Remember we were trying to say, people were like, is Eli an elite quarterback? He's not. He's not an elite quarterback. He had 2 elite performances, but that doesn't make you an elite quarterback. Elite quarterback is week in and week out. And how many of those are? Joe Burrow is elite. Patrick Mahomes is elite. Josh Allen, elite. That might be it. Like truly elite. Oh, Lamar Jackson. Yeah, so those 4, but that would be my conversation. If I was bringing that up, proposing a topic, I would say, is Jalen Hurts an elite quarterback? Because then you get that discussion, is he better than Justin Herbert? Throw in a couple other, and you get to mention Dak Prescott at some point there, and presto, changeo, you've got a segment there on the mothership. Yes, Paulie.
I was thinking about Hurts and with what you're saying about elite. I think his numbers will prevent him from being considered a regular season elite guy. He's going to throw for 3,300 yards and 22 touchdowns every year. He's not going to lead the league in any category. This is an old school player comp, but this is very old school. Roger Staubach years ago was fantastic. He was a winner, but he ran and passed and never led the league in a lot of categories. But he just played well and was a leader. And I think that might be the player comp.
Yeah, they're just not everybody's elite. Once again, if you're an elite quarterback, is the defense going to force you to beat them? And I would say no. Defenses were probably saying to Eli Manning, let's see if you can beat us. And he did beat the Patriots twice. But that was a defense that didn't want Saquon Barkley to beat them. Not, Jalen Hurts. But Hurts did produce. He did play extremely well. But do I think he's an elite quarterback? No. The defense, what we saw, that was, there's always recency bias. I just remember when the Bears played the Patriots, and maybe that's not a good comparison, in that same building many, many, many years ago. I mean, that wasn't fair. That was not fair. The Ravens against the Giants, that was not fair. The Steelers, when they played the Vikings back in whatever Super Bowl 5 or whatever it was, 6, that wasn't fair. Like, there's certain performances by a defense where you go, golly, this is bad. They should stop this fight. Yes, Marv.
Do you think Jalen Hurts is more of the Russell Wilson type, where he probably might not get all the credit for a Super Bowl win, but he was really good in that Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think that's a great comp there. Because Russ, in that Super Bowl, they lost against the Patriots. He was unstoppable. The Patriots truly did not have an answer for him until that pass play. Because other than that, he's going to win a Super Bowl and he's going to be the MVP. He's going to have 2 Super Bowls on his resume. But watching that game on the field, you could see there was absolute disarray and frustration with the Patriots trying to stop Russell Wilson because he really was great that evening. All righty. See, what's the poll question we're going to go with today?
Yeah, I think that you make an interesting point, too, that they forced Jalen Hurts, the Chiefs forced Jalen Hurts to beat them, and he did. By taking away Saquon Barkley, they're like, we're not going to let their best player beat us.
Yeah.
So we're going to force this dude to make some plays, and it turns out he did.
So what kind of poll question are we looking at?
Who is the biggest threat? Who's the biggest threat? Who's the big threat to the Eagles in the NFC? Lions, 49ers, Commanders, Buccaneers, Vikings, Rams, other, neither.
Oh, don't you have to put the Cowboys on there, at least question mark?
I don't know that we do. Gotta admit, I don't know that we do.
The Cowboys were
the threatening teams.
Yeah. The Cowboys were the 11th ranked team in the NFC last year. They had 7 wins. There's 10 teams ahead of them on the depth chart.
Sorry, top 10 only.
Yeah.
Well, Dak Prescott said they're pretty close, though. Of course, he has to say that. Now, if he said, no, we're not close, now you have a story. But of course he's going to say, I could probably say to Caleb Williams, hey, how close are you to being a Super Bowl team? Hey, we're not that far away. I would say the Commanders feel a little closer. The Lions feel a little closer. I would still put San Francisco in there, maybe last call. But, yeah, you could do that. I think recency bias, people would say probably the Commanders. I'd still say the Lions because the Lions get healthy. They have everybody. They don't necessarily need anybody. But if they would happen to go all in on Myles Garrett, now all of a sudden we have a conversation here. But that Eagles defense, now they might lose a couple of these players. I think they have 3 free agents there. But you still have your offense signed up. And that's still a great offensive line and a great defensive line. Just that combination there, you're in every game. Every single game because you have a great offensive line, great defensive line. And because of that, the Eagles will be back in this situation next season if they stay healthy. Kellen Moore is leaving the Eagles. There were people who talked about, would you leave the Eagles' offensive coordinator position to be a head coach? Now, granted, it's the Saints. And they're generic. But still, you get to be a head coach in the NFL. I mean, that's the goal. For most of these coordinators, you can't pass on that. He's never going to get the credit in Philadelphia. Oh, who was the offensive coordinator? Oh, Kellen Moore. Yeah. Wasn't he with the Cowboys? Yeah. He was with the Chargers. So his window is open. It was open for him to get the head coaching position. Now, the Saints aren't going to be very good. Like the Saints are sort of in no man's land, that they're middle and they're vanilla. Like there's nothing about them where you go, hey, now the first 2 weeks of this past season, when they're putting up 40 points, I'm like, wait a minute here. What's going on with the Saints? And then they came back to earth, and then we realized the Saints are the Saints or the Aints. And, okay, you can win that division, but I expect Atlanta to one day get it right. Tampa Bay is still good. But, these windows, they open and they close rapidly. The Rams, it felt like the window was open just a little bit, and then they opened it wider and wider and wider, and then all of a sudden I go, they are going to beat the Eagles. They're going to go down and score a touchdown, kick the extra point. They're going to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's how close it was when you think about, hey, the Eagles were great. Now, granted, you're playing in snow, but the Eagles are in Philadelphia. The Rams are in L.A. So, factor that in if you want to, that maybe that kept the game closer because of the conditions. But the Rams were going to beat the Eagles in Philadelphia at their own game. That's how close it was. So as much as we want to christen the Eagles and say, man, dominating, and they were, they could have easily have lost that game to the Rams.